All right, we're on a series called Paul's Road Trips. And as you know, we're trying to liken his missionary journeys to road trips and kind of relate them to things that maybe we might encounter on a road trip for the simple reason, the simple plan is so that I can remember it. I, a lot of times you hear about Paul's missionary journeys and where he went and what he did. And in my mind, I kind of have a hard time keeping some of those things straight. You know, what did he do there? What did he do here? You see where he writes a letter, he writes an epistle to the Philippians. Well, when was he in Philippi? What were kind of the circumstances? And for me, I think it's kind of helpful to understand how it was founded or what was going on in his ministry at the time, so that when we read the letter, okay, we have a little bit more insight onto the nature and the character and kind of the situation that he spoke to in the first place. I find that to be kind of helpful for me. Just to kind of review real quick, we talked about the first thing we talked about was Saul's last road trip, and it talked about his journey on the road to Damascus when the Lord says, "Oh, what are you doing?" Yeah, that's not the exact words, but you get the idea. Then we talked about things like who's got shotgun, there's no place like home, mandatory stops, high octane fuel, no detours, the hot wash, recalculating, roadside assistance, are we there yet? Road rage, visit the town hall, and this week, traffic jam in Corinth. And all those might sound enticing. Go to the YouTube page, go to the Facebook page, you can catch up and kind of get an idea of where we've been. Bear in mind that our studies are not exhaustive studies in particular topics. We just couldn't do it. That's Pastor Carl. He does a better job of that. So now we're in Corinth, and I told you a couple of weeks ago, and you may not remember because it's been a couple of weeks ago. I love Corinth, but I don't love Corinth for Corinth. I love Corinth for what it represents. I love Corinth for Paul, and there's so much that we can identify with on what Corinth was like. There's so much that we can identify with in a sense of what Paul had gone through. And I want to make sure we understand one thing about Paul. Paul's a lot like we are. Paul was not born saved. Paul wasn't even born Paul. He was born Saul, right? And even when he got saved, when he met the Lord and the Lord gave him his vision and enabled him, Paul didn't start his ministry as a mature, well-adapted Christian. You know, he didn't even end his ministry that way. And that gives me great hope. Because aren't we all sincerely a work in progress? I fail. I failed this week. I just to let you know a little bit of it. I was asked something that in my flesh I didn't want to do. And to my shame, I didn't respond right. I had to go